It's time for episode 70 of Commentators Corner, and I've got a very, very good friend alongside with me for this particular episode. You might know him in the YouTube space as Red Actions, a man who has nearly 45,000 subscribers on YouTube. Is one of the most prolific karting content creators I know, but I know him also as Bram Ossewarde from the Netherlands. Bram, thank you very much for being a guest on the show. How are things?
Yeah, well, thank you for that introduction, Alex. And thank you for having me on the show. Well, things are going quite well with me personally. Quite busy with work, with karting, with creating content, but also mechanicking as of lately and a bit of coaching as well. So, yeah, everything's quite busy, but I'm enjoying myself. My health is good, so nothing to complain about, really.
I mean, Blam, if you want to expand on what you actually do within content creation and obviously within the world of karting to our folks at home.
So, I started creating content about 3 years ago, or 4 years ago, actually. And I first started out with sim racing during the COVID pandemic. And at that point in time, I had to quit karting because the funds dried up from my dad's side of the business. So that meant I was stuck at home, couldn't do karting. And then I was like, hey, let's just create videos about sim racing. And then the idea dawned on me one day to make videos about karting and maybe to do a comeback, as my dad was helping me a little bit financially. So I started making videos about karting, just my experience, just really basic vlogs, just me taking a camera with me to a day of karting, because I actually found that that side of the sport isn't really shown as much as what I think it should be. So, excuse me. So I thought that people would enjoy content like that. And well, 3 years later, I'm still doing the same thing, but trying to do it more professionally every time. But my role in the karting community has sort of shifted from showing people what karting is like to helping people start out in karting, to which the videos, of course, play a big role, because it's really an uncut, true representation of what life in the paddock is like and how things happen. And I think I'm basically the only one who does it like this.
And also, one of the things that I forgot to mention, well, if you've seen the thumbnail, this man is the reigning and defending Tillotson T4 Nations Cup senior champion. I mean, that's been a hell of a journey for you to document as well. I still remember the first vlog of how I, in brackets, almost became a world champion. And then you went back there with a good friend of both of us, Kevin Lantinga, who was your mechanic. And it was, when you had that eventual sign of like, yeah, I've got this, that they've started fighting behind me, and I've like literally you cross that line, that euphoria, that pure outburst of emotion is unlike anything other when you become a karting world champion.
Yeah, I think you got it down pretty good there. Of course, as a racing driver, all you're doing during the race is just executing a script, a set of instructions that are just imprinted in you from a very young age or by natural talent. And once you get to the finish line, the script is finished, and then like the real human can come out. And at first I was quite numb about it. Like I didn't fully grasp what just happened. But afterwards, yeah, of course, I was super happy. But it took a few minutes to kick in.
I think also when Jake Sanson, a good friend of mine within the commentary world, came up to you and said, Bram, what's your plan? And you went, well, I don't really have one. And that's exactly the mantra that any racing driver, when you go into that kind of pressure cooker situation and it's the final and it's all on the line, it's like, this is a one-off event. I've got one opportunity, one chance to make it right. Everyone gets those nerves in the stomach, don't they? They get the butterflies, and you're sort of like thinking, okay, right, let's just see how this plays out. And with the strategy that was, I think what was it? The first lap, we had a couple of drivers that got caught out. I think some of the big players were caught out as well. And that really sort of gave you that little bit of motivation to sort of spur forward, because you're not concentrating on what's happening behind you unless it's like right up your exhaust pipe, isn't it?
Yeah, exactly. All I was trying to do was just focus on my own race, just try to get to the finish line as quickly as possible. And the only way to do that is to just keep focusing forward. And especially with the Tillotson T4 cards, which are less powerful than like a two-stroke or Rotax, an X30, doesn't really matter what. Slipstream plays a very big role. So it's actually a better idea, even if you are like in P2 or the guy behind you is quicker, to just not fight it at all. Just go with the flow. Use Slipstream to be faster than the drivers behind you who don't have it. And especially at a track like Valencia, which is just all straights, it is super important to just stick to your original plan, even though I said I didn't have one. I kind of did, just pull away, try to pull away, focus on the race. But I didn't have a plan like, okay, in lap 5, I'm going to do this. In lap 6, I'm going to do that. It's 50-50 really. Like you want to have some ideas about what you should do, but the rest is just instinct and just be fast. That's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, I think by being put under the spotlight because you qualified on pole for, after a couple of races where I think you had Tim van Elswijk and Damon Vetter along with Danny Krischer who were fighting you. I think even Gonzalez was pretty rapid that weekend in Valencia, and he was one of the local heroes. So there was a lot. There's a lot to compound, especially when people say that karting is just some people I've talked to over the years through my years as a commentator, and they go like, karting's child's play. No, it's far from it. There is a science, there is an art to this racing category, as you very well know, Bram. But coming on to your recent victory in Bodendijk, so congratulations, well done. New colours I see as well, so nice new sticker kit. Have you got the corresponding race suit for that as well now?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, by the way. Yeah, I do have a correct racing suit corresponding to the stickers. Yeah, for this year, I'm stepping away from racing a little bit, not completely retiring, but focusing more on the helping people side rather than my own racing side. So with that comes a new livery and a new identity I want to really build for myself, which is the Red Actions driver development. And you can tell by the name, it's all about helping people, helping drivers, advance in the sport, because our sport is really difficult to start out in. Everyone knows that. So with the content, I'm really trying to create a platform which provides both free and paid information for people who want to start out with karting. And the sticker kit is definitely like a part of building the brand. And what better way to advertise the brand than to win a race?
Yeah, I have to say, I'm actually looking at the. This was back on March 10th, so like literally about a week, just over a week ago. And it's just really cool to see that livery in motion. It's like poetry, where everyone has their own respective identity. On building a brand, how important is it for you to make your mark? I mean, as you said, during COVID-19, you started with sim racing, then it got on to racing competitively. Of course, this man has raced in the BNL Karting Series, which I'm still a part of over the years. And now we've started collaborating, you and I, a little bit, haven't we? So Bram has asked me to do some professional voiceover commentary, which is really enjoyable for me, which is something I see that we could possibly do in the future, you and I. But it's all about finding what content does and doesn't work. You'll have some that will have a lot of hits, like thousands of likes, thousands of views, and then you'll have some that will be like not on the same level. The YouTube algorithm does like to test us all.
Yeah, it does. So what I really try to do is create two types of content. One is content which I try to make appealing to the general public, like people who are sort of interested in motorsport but don't really know that much about it, who just want a simple, entertaining video to watch which introduces them to the subject in a playful manner. And yeah, those are really like the vlogs that I make. Some of the more fun and not that heavy on information loaded shorts. Those are really to just get in the masses. And then for people who are serious about karting and actually want to learn something, I have some other videos, and they get less views. That absolutely, they get less views. But I think they are more important to the community than the more general videos. Those are really just to crunch the numbers, and the others are really to add value to the community.
I think it's a bit like we discussed before we started recording this podcast, that it's not about the level of the guests that I have. It's all about the quality and the people that I've met over the years. That's what speaks volumes. And quality can be dissected in quite a few different ways. If the subject matter is interesting enough, then people will listen, they will watch, they will take the information in, and then maybe get in touch with the individual. But there's times when, like, you've done your longer vlogs, which will be like anywhere between 30 to 45 minutes, and one of the things that I always find funny is that Bram does actually say the respective curse words, but then you use it sounds like it's like a fly's being swatted. Like, what was the decision to use that entertaining noise to bleep out any curse words?
Well, that's actually an audio that's used by bigger YouTubers when they swear, because YouTube has quite strict policies on swearing.
Mm-hmm.
So it's better to just censor out the words than to actually have the word in there. Because don't get me wrong, those words get used quite a lot in the paddock by anyone. Of course, you don't always see it, but that's, I think, one of the strong things on my channel. I try to show it like as real as I can, but in order to still comply with the YouTube guidelines, I have to censor the words. And for that, I just use a sound that I think is funny. It's basically just a very distorted, loud buzz. And like I said, it had been used on YouTube for a few years, and I just thought it was funny. So I decided to use that.
So you fell in line with all the big YouTube creators and thought, well, I'll use that sound. And yeah, every time I hear you drop the F-bomb or whatever, it's quite entertaining when you hear that like noise. It's you can't exactly miss it, folks, whenever you watch one of Bram's videos. But also, the funny thing is that relationships develop in motorsport. We've got to know each other quite well over the last few years. Bram came over just to spectate. I think it was, what was it, one of the rounds of the Euro Trophy, and I took you a bit behind the scenes with regards to what I see on commentary from a racing driver perspective, to see what a commentator has in terms of output and everything. How impressed were you with how much information that I have to try and dissect during a race when you got 36 seniors going into turn one at Genk, for instance?
Well, I thought it was a little bit overwhelming, to be honest. Of course, you have a lot of things to pay attention to. And of course, we all like to be critical about commentators when they miss something happening on track or something, or when you don't see something. But can you really blame the commentator for that? Because there's so much happening. I usually, when I commentate on my own races in my videos, I find myself wanting to say 3 things at once, and then I actually end up saying nothing at all. Or a combination of the 3 things I wanted to say, which doesn't make any sense.
Mm.
So yeah, I was pretty overwhelmed by the amount of information you have to process.
Yeah, I mean, I will actually link the vlog and actually at the timestamp down in the description, along with Bram's respective social media and YouTube channels. But coming on to relationships, obviously, I take it you're still with Vitske by any chance? Is that correct?
Yes, correct. That's correct.
The younger sister of Beitske. Now, if you don't know who Beitske is, you've been living under a rock for the past few seasons. But what is it like for, because Vitska's also a competitive driver. You've mechanic for her, you've raced alongside her. How's the dynamic in the relationship when you're both wanting to go out there and go for the W, especially when you're both out on track? I think, what was it? I was watching a race where you guys were at the F-Landring in Karting.
Well, it went surprisingly well, I have to say. Of course, we're both drivers who have years of experience in the sport. Vitske actually has had quite some success in the past in the Rotax Mini and Senior X30 categories. So I was very interested to see who would come out on top in the end between the two of us. Mm-hmm. And we were both really competitive with each other, but we actually didn't get into any fights even after coming together, because I think we had 2 or 3 coming together over the last season. One of which was my fault, actually. And the other one was due to a mechanical failure on her side. So that was really no one's fault. But things got a little bit tense at some points, but nowhere near tense enough to cause any real problems in the relationship. Actually, right now, I'm still in the world of T4. I'm a mechanic at the Dutch T4 series for Noah Rosser, the 2023 T4 Nations Cup winner. And Vitske is actually doing some driver coaching and telemetry analysis as well on the same team. So we went from competing against each other now to working together in the same team, which is, I think, a dream come true for a lot of people, because the life of a racing driver and a mechanic can be so busy, and it's really easy to not have time for your girlfriend, but actually being able to take her with you on the weekend, and that we are both actually doing what we love and getting paid for it as well, I think that's a dream come true for anyone.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. I mean, it was great seeing you and her battle each other at that round of the Dutch Tillotson T4 series. I've had the opportunity of commentating on Tillotson T4 over in Latvia as part of the Latvian Karting Championship. And for anyone that hasn't really got an understanding of Tillotson T4, same chassis for everybody, same tyres, same 4-stroke engine, which has this... If you hear 36 Cini Rotax carts go into turn 1 at Genk, it sounds like a hornet's nest. And it sounds like the ground is vibrating when the 4-strokes come flying past. It's a completely different noise and a completely different animal. Because of your experience with doing both Rotax Max and Tillotson T4, what are the biggest differences in terms of keeping the pace up with both engines? Because Rotax is like momentum carrying, but Tillotson T4 has a slightly different skill set that you need to employ when hustling it through the corners and trying to get the acceleration through the traction zones.
So from what I've noticed, the Rotax is really all about having a really clean and sort of passive driving style, especially the senior, which is the class I know the best. You often find yourself actually going faster when you stop pushing. Just the way with how the class works as of now, it's very important to, keep the momentum high and really to keep the neatness and the calmness in the chassis at a complete maximum. And an example from a round of RMC Germany I did last year. In the last corner at Gabon, you can brake super late and like really attack the corner. But if you actually brake 2 to 3 meters earlier and really roll into the corner, you actually find that you'll gain about 2/10, whilst you feel like you're just taking a step back. A really great trick that I actually learned from Jori Schoens, one of the Dutch drivers, is you always want to drive as if you are saving the tires with the senior Rotax, like saving on the back foot, and then you'll find yourself being quick. And with the T4, the idea is the same, that you have to keep momentum in the corners because the engine is not that powerful. But the way you achieve that is actually really different from the Rotax Max. So the tires are Maxes. They are a harder compound designed to be more budget friendly, so you can run like 2, 3, even 4 days on a single set, and you really can't do that with the Mojo tires. So the way that you drive these is you have to be a lot more like aggressive. You have to attack the corners a lot more. You can take more entry speed. You really have to use the front grip of the chassis, which the T4 has quite a lot of, to rotate the kart. And you really want to get on the power in a super aggressive way as early as you can. And that tends to suit my driving style a bit more than the more passive, clean driving style of the senior Rotax, which is why I've struggled with senior Rotax in the dry over the last few years. And then in the wet, you see me just being on the other side of the grid usually. And that's all down to the fact that you can be more aggressive with the T4 and with the Rotax. But the basics of karting still apply. You still want to brake late. You still want to be fast in the corners, early on the power. And in terms of setup, it's actually more or less the same. It's the same idea. You can't do the exact same things on a T4 because setup is limited. But you always want to run a strong front end and a small sprocket. That's no different.
Yeah, because coming back to your 2024 Tillotson T4 Nations Cup vlog, where you talked about the different sprockets, where you had the 72 sprocket, which gave you really good acceleration out of the corners. You then had the 71, which was the mid tier, the balanced. But you and Kevin decided to go for the 70 sprocket, which gave you that top speed, which really allowed to stretch the revs on the 4-stroke Tillotson T4 engine, which really paid dividends when you were battling Damon and Tim, especially in the final. It's always about making that choice when it comes to talking setup, which is what I'm leaning to in now, where you have to be very, very precise, because there's only so much adjustment that you can do in karting when it comes to the tie rods, the steering, tire pressures. There's so much that you can do, but there's so much that you can't do in, say, relation to, say, going from karting to Formula 4, for instance. You still got to very much get it on point, haven't you?
Yeah, absolutely. One thing that we were lucky about at the T4 Nations Cup is the fact that setup is actually quite limited by regulation, just to keep it fair for everyone. So the T4 class is really aimed to keep costs low for the drivers. Of course, in the senior Rotax category, for example, you can choose whatever chassis you want, which has a lot of setup options. Just the OTK chassis, for example, has, I think, about 15, 16 different types of axles that you can use. Whereas with the T4, you only have one. So that's limited. But with the limited things that you do have, you can still make quite a big difference. Now, the T4 Nations Cup is actually quite a bad example, because we actually ran the completely standard out-of-the-box setup, which was on the card, which tended to work the best for us. We tried some things, it didn't really work. We tried some crazy things with the setup, but we actually stayed really close to the standard setup, which isn't true on all tracks. I can't say much, but I can say that.
But then, obviously, talking with, let's look at Rotax Senior now. There are so many people that work not just with regards to teams, but also engine tuners. We have to give a shout out to JVD Power. Jakob,
Absolutely.
one of the best tuners around, I think, in Europe, especially when you look at the likes of Mike van Vugt, Kai Gielitz, who've used his engine to European Championship success. I mean, let's not forget, we have to give a shout out to Kai, because he's just announced his plans for 2025. He's leaving karting and going into Lamborghini Super Trofeo, which is pretty cool. But Jako's one of these people that really knows the inside, up to like literally micrometers of the cylinder head and that kind of stuff. His knowledge is so valuable when it comes to engine waft and performance, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. Of course, with the two-stroke classes, you will always have small differences between the engines, which is just inherent to motorsport, but it gets amplified in the two-stroke world. No motorsport class is immune to this. Even the T4 class, which is really aimed at like equality and low cost, even in classes like that, you can still find small improvements in the engines. But yeah, in motorsport, everything needs to be right. You need to be a good driver, your setup needs to be on point, but you also need a good engine. And without, just excuse me for 1 second, I need to sneeze.
Go on.
No, it's not coming through.
Ah, well.
The engine is just as important part of the equation as the driver or as the setup or as the kart. And that's why people like Jaco are just important for the sport, because having the right engine beside you in the case of karting is super important, and having a good relationship with your engine builder is also, I would say that's even more important than just having a good engine.
Yeah, I think it's just a combination of all factors. You've also been racing not just in continental Europe, but you've also been to Denmark a few times. You've raced at Voyens Motorsport Arena. You've also raced at the Magnussen family track as well. What's just to give the folks an idea, what's the difference in terms of paddock atmosphere, if there is any, and the competitive nature over in Denmark compared to, say, Belgium, the Netherlands, Germany, for instance?
Well, that's a great question, because the paddock atmosphere and the competitiveness is actually one of the biggest reasons I keep going back to Denmark. So I feel like the Danish paddock is a lot more open to beginners. And that is because there's actually a form of government support for kids who want to do any sport that they want. I'm not exactly sure how it works. I haven't really done my research into that, but from what I've been told is that the Danish government decided that all kids under 18 have the right to have some after-school activities, and it can be whatever they want for a fixed amount per month for the parents. And karting is one of those things. So for 25 euros or around about 25 euros a month, a kid can do karting, like basic stuff, driving, mechanicking. And that's how a lot of people start over there. So the government actually supports clubs like that a lot more than in any other country I've ever been to. And if I'm not mistaken, all of the land that the tracks use to operate their facilities are owned by the government. And they actually, in a way, fix the prices for track fee. Like when I first did a race in Denmark, I was shocked by how cheap the race fees were, how cheap the track fee was. Those were all like completely foreign to me. Just to give an example, if you want to do a practice day at like a Dutch, a German or Belgian track, it could easily be like between 50 or 70 euros just for a day. And in Denmark, it was, I think, like 25, 30 if we convert it from Danish crowns to euros. Same as the race fees, they can go up to like 300-400 euros for a single round here, and in Denmark it was only about 90 or 100. So that's a really big difference, and that creates a more open atmosphere for new people to join. That also means that the group of inexperienced and new or beginner drivers is quite large there, but that doesn't mean that there is no real competitive side to it, because as you know, there are a lot of fast Danish drivers who do really well, like the BNL or the Euro Trophy or whatever.
Yeah, I think a perfect example of that would be Frederick Zebis, who midway through last season switched over from Robert Schlenson's team at RS Competition and then went over with Stan Pex at SP Motorsport, and straight out of the bag he was blindingly quick. Doesn't always seem to have the luck, do the Danes? I think this is something we can now work into as well, that along with everything that comes together, you can have the perfect chassis, you can have the perfect setup, you can, the engine's running right as it should be, and then, quali goes well, then the race, everything goes to shit. Like you could end up having a really bad qualifying session. You've been very open about that when you've had really, really bad qualifying sessions, but then you've come through the field. And then there are times when you're stuck in the mid pack. And a perfect example of bad luck is being in the mid pack at Karting Genk and going into turn one, and then finding it's sandwiched in the middle, or you're stuck on the outside going through into T1. It's 3 or 4 wide, and you're the one that gets yeeted and exits stage left. I think a perfect example of that was Miska Kaskinen at the Golden Trophy a couple of years ago, and we'd had so much rainfall in Limburg that the grass was not just grass, it was mud. And Miska on the V5 CIK Mojo wet weather tyres managed to cover himself and the kart completely. And I made the quip of, well, Miska Kaskinen's just done the karting Genk muddy joker lap. It is that case where you do have to have a little bit of lady luck on your side in racing, even though some drivers don't believe in luck.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I would say that you don't necessarily need luck. You just don't want bad luck.
Mm-hmm.
But a lot of things, what I've come to learn over the last few years is that a lot of things that people call bad luck can actually be influenced by you as a driver or by the team. For example, when you DNF with a mechanical failure, I don't necessarily call that bad luck, because it could have been something that you could have prevented because you're responsible for having the right machinery. I always try to blame bad luck as little as possible, just to, if it's something I can prevent, I want to prevent it. But there are, of course, real cases of bad luck, like a mechanical failure that you can't see coming, or a crash happening right in front of you and you have nowhere to go. Well, that's disputable as well, because you could argue that if you were fast enough to win, you shouldn't have been in the bad position in the first place, but that's a whole different story. Or you could just get, I already talked about random mechanical failures. Anyway, an example, the chain in karting, they tend to break if you use them for too long. But they also break when they're brand new. And that's really something you can't do anything about. And I actually had that twice last year. So not great.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, I did everything right by the book, but then it still went wrong. That's just part of motorsport. And that's what I call real bad luck.
Yeah, I mean, the term mechanical sympathy always comes to mind whenever I talk about it, especially if it's a one-off event, like, say, the Champions Winter Trophy, that it's a winner-take-all event. And what I mean by that, folks, is that you go through the heats, you go through, depending on the format of the races. I mean, the B&L has gone back to the pre-final, final format that a lot of people loved back in the day, but it's now the finals are the only places where you actually score points. So it's building up to that. We still, it's quite good to have quite a lot of competitive action. We did have quite a few incidents, especially juniors. I think of the final coming out of turn 2, heading into the triple left-hander before you go onto the Europalan. We had one car stuck on top of a car, stuck on top of another. And it was Lars Lambers stuck underneath Shun Sekaguchi, because Sekaguchi got T-boned. Then someone's front bumper lifted him over. So you got Lars Lambers here, Shun Sekaguchi here. Sekaguchi got put on all 4 wheels again. Lars Lambers' front Nassau bracket was completely busted to the point where it wasn't sitting right. And I think there was more damage apart from that. So you get those kind of what I like to call concertina accidents, where one thing happens and it becomes like a domino effect. And you've experienced that quite a few times as well, Bram. But in many respects, what's one of okay, I'm going to not try and put you on the spot here, but out of karting, what would you say are the top 3 things that you love about the sport itself, apart from, let's say, on track?
Well, definitely the thing that I love the most about the sport is trying to reach perfection. Like, getting to perfection is impossible, but trying to reach it definitely isn't. And what I mean by that is, first of all, driving well, which is what the main focus is on most of the times, but also you have to have the right people around you. You have to have the right equipment. You have to prepare the equipment. You have to find the limits of the equipment. You just have to try, and really trying to find your way in a world with so many options. And then when it all comes together and you get that win, that is really the most satisfying thing ever. Like, it's difficult to really understand because for someone who doesn't do this sport, but really getting the max out of everything within your abilities, that's one of the most rewarding experiences that you can ever have. So that's that's the main thing I enjoy. And I also enjoy it when it goes well for other people, like not when I'm competing against them, well, in less of a degree, but let's say someone wins an X30, which is a class I really don't have much to do with, but just looking at or just watching someone race well and having a good equipment, I even enjoy watching that because I just know how much work has gone into that and how perfect everything needs to be in order to achieve something like that. I can really enjoy that. Another thing that I love is the people you meet. Of course, you're not going to be friends with everyone you meet, but the few ones that you can call friends, usually they become very close. Like a friend from the track is usually you're more close with them than like a friend you meet in school or something.
Mm-hmm.
because you have that shared passion and that shared interest, which just goes a lot deeper than just a regular friendship in school or something. And also what I like is the travel, more or less. You just get to see parts of the world or of your country that you normally don't get to see. And also, this actually ties back to my first point, maximizing your performance in a new circumstance, like a new track you've never been to before or a new country. For example, my first time when I was in Denmark, of course, it's all slightly different. The tracks are slightly different. The weather is different. It's colder there, of course, because we're in Scandinavia. Yeah, trying to maximize yourself really and the situation, your equipment. That's really that's what I love about sport. And when it all comes together, super satisfying.
Well, I mean, one of the other things when it comes to travel is flying, and your eardrums don't tend to serve you very well during flying because I bet you're one of the ones that, I mean, I have it all the time. I had perforated eardrums when I was 3 years old, and I always have to do this the minute then we get to like 5,000. When I get to feel when my ears are about to pop, I have to do that. It's not easy, is it? Especially with your equilibrium.
I haven't really flown that much in my life, to be honest, but the times that I have been on an airplane, yeah, it hurts quite bad. For me, it only starts when we start descending again. So going all the way up there isn't a problem. It's once we start coming back down. That's like when the pressure increases again. That's when it gets bad. And actually, at the 2023 T4 Nations Cup, my hearing was pretty impaired. Like it was like someone turned the volume dial on everything by like 50%. I couldn't hear anything for like 2 weeks. So that was annoying. But the last time wasn't too bad. I brought a lot of gum with me on the plane. I actually went to the doctor to ask for some advice beforehand. And also blowing your nose while keeping it shut, that definitely helped to pop the ears back into the normal position.
Yeah. I've got one real final question, and it's about the Red Actions driver development program that you set up, and you're now using AI Motor as a coaching tool. You know, you've got over a decade and a half of experience within racing. You've won, you've had success, obviously, with Tillotson T4 being the most recent, with the Nations Cup Senior World Title crown. How much has AI Motor benefited your ability to help coach drivers during meetings and for them to get a further understanding of how you're advising them?
Well, it has helped me quite a lot in the fact that it's basically just a second coach, which does what you say absolutely 100% accurately. Of course, we've all used ChatGPT at some point, some people more than others. But once you get a feel for how an AI responds to your questions and the way you need to ask it a question to get the answer that you want, once you master that, it's a super helpful tool. And the same goes with setup, because the way the AI motor system works is you upload your telemetry data to their servers, and then you upload the data of like a faster driver or a faster lap time that you did, and it will deconstruct everything about the data. And then when you ask it a question like, why am I losing time here in turn 3, or why am I losing 2/10 here? It will go over every single thing and every single option it can find, even better than a coach, like a human coach can. And it just helps you get like a full understanding of the corner in a way which you couldn't really do before. Like, of course, when you get your telemetry analysis with the team or something, or just in person, you're never going to get 100% of all the possibilities that can be the reason as to why you are losing time in a specific corner. And the AI, it just runs its algorithm and its script, and it finds everything and anything, even in setup things.
Yeah, well, folks, if you do want to find this man in person, well, he is going to be at the opening round of Rotax Max Challenge Belgium, which will have already transpired past this podcast being recorded. But you're going to be running in GK4 for round 3 at Genk. We've obviously just had the NXT Dutch Open round 1. You're going to be doing round 3 of that at Kjerpen, a kart for fun, and then also a couple of trips to Denmark, Roskilde and Voyens. I mean, I'm heading to Voyens later on this year for the classic kart race 100cc European Grand Prix, which I've been doing for the last few years. But Bram, thank you so much for being a guest here on episode 70 of Commentators Corner. Folks, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. You can find us not just here on YouTube, also Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Downforce Radio, the nation's motorsport stations. That's it for episode 70 of Commentators Corner. Well, race hard, race fair, and if in doubt, you better go flat out. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. Goodbye.
Bye-bye.